I like your shirt, man. Is it? What
Oh,
is it?
this is my protest shirt because as of right now, Sonny is still a Leverkusen player. Tottenham are not on speaking terms. We're not. I'm not talking to Tottenham right now. So as far as I'm concerned,
We're live right now, actually. So anyway, welcome to our second live stream, Plan A live stream. I'm Adam, and we have Chris.
yeah, our roster suddenly dwindled. Keen is going to try to make it, but unfortunately, the other three were busy tonight. So it'll be a trio at most.
At most. But there is a lot to talk about. I know in the description we said we're going to talk about Andrew Yang and I think Ivy League worship, but I
Among other
think,
things, yeah.
among other things, but I think it's probably good to start with just maybe our initial thoughts on, the Chauvin verdict and whatever other thoughts we might have around that. So I don't know, Chris. I don't know if you had anything you really wanted to say, or
I was thinking, hey, you know what? Today not only was Derek Chauvin found guilty, but European Super League also kaput. Churches
yeah.
released a new song, and I was like, you know what?
Oh,
This is not a bad day, but you know what? Apparently, a 15-year-old girl was killed in Columbus, Ohio, just like a
yeah,
few hours ago. So it's like I don't know. Honestly, I find the whole thing pretty empty. Just be like, okay,
yeah,
the absolute worst was averted, but I don't know. I'd be very suspicious of anyone who is like too happy about this,
yeah,
because it would feel like this thing of, you know what, guys, this country works after all. You know, that kind of energy. Like,
yeah. That
that
kind of
doesn't.
energy is, um, yeah. I feel similarly in that it's a very empty sort of quote unquote victory. I mean, it's the absolute lowest bar has been cleared, and it shouldn't be seen as sort of like the first step of anything in my mind. I see a lot of like this is a first step towards justice or first step towards change. And
Oh, did you see what Jess wrote?
what's that?
The comments, looking good, nerds.
Yeah. I'm very red right now. I think I've actually had a couple of drinks.
Oh, really?
My wife and I, we actually brew our own makgeolli, which I don't know if people know what that is, but it's a Korean rice wine or rice alcohol, and we brew it on our own. So we have, but yeah, it's just very empty, man. I mean, it's like what was it's. I think it's like the system sort of will serve up their sacrificial lambs to make it seem like things are working the way they should, and or populist anger, and you know, I think one of the big takeaways is that the sort of the threat of defund, the threat of sort of taking away their money and their influence and power, especially even in Minneapolis, because they actually, Teen tweeted about this, but they really pushed hard on this, and this stuff can work, right? I mean, defund. I know there's been a lot of ink spilled, and a lot of people talk about how it's bad strategy, bad tactics. Well, okay, maybe you lose a couple of elections, but there's much more to this than just a couple of elections, right? And we need to keep pushing, and I think that's sort of like, this isn't the beginning or end of anything, and we just got to keep going. But yeah. And on a lighter note, I guess, yeah, as you said, the European Super League seems to be kaput.
Mm-hmm.
And for those that don't know what the European Super League is, it's sort of a soccer thing. Chris, do you want to explain it a little bit?
Yeah, actually, Adam, I think you had a good analogy. Just imagine if the most famous of the NCAA basketball schools decided, yeah, we don't want to have to qualify for March Madness anymore. We're just
Yep.
going to create our own tournament. We don't have to qualify, and we don't ever want a chance of like a Butler upsetting us We don't want
Yeah.
any of you kind. We just want the top dogs, no matter
Right.
even if they have an off year.
Right.
We want
It's like
them there.
right, exactly. It's like Duke this year wasn't in the tournament.
Oh wow,
And
really?
yeah, they didn't make the tournament.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would be like if saying Duke was like, you know what? Yeah, as you said, like we're just gonna have our own tournament. We'll always be in it.
Yeah,
and maybe
no-
North Carolina and like UConn and other places.
And none of the money we make is going to flow down to the smaller teams.
Right.
And essentially, it would relegate the current top elite domestic leagues. I'm talking about like the Premier League, La Liga, Serie A, to like
The
second
Bundesliga,
second status. They like the Premier League would become the Championship, Ligue 1 would become Ligue 2, and etc.
Yeah, League Two.
Effectively, because all the glamour teams would be out, so nobody would watch them. And it was, I think, such a perfect example of how, despite all the preaching about competition and meritocracy,
Yeah.
when it comes down to it, the current status quo winners really don't like competition. They don't like. I
Nope.
think this was mainly fueled by the Premier League teams because
Probably.
because Liverpool might not make the Champions League, and I don't think Tottenham will. Arsenal definitely will not. Chelsea might not. If West Ham keeps it up, Chelsea might not make the Champions League, and I don't think these teams like having to compete for 4 slots. There are too many teams competing for 4 slots. There's
Yeah.
always going to be somebody on the outside, and they're like, we can't stand this. It's too much pressure on us, and we don't want. Yeah.
Well, and the owners would have to spend too much money to actually try to compete, right? So they would rather have an environment where they don't need to compete for any sort of slot in anything. They're guaranteed.
Yeah.
Because
John.
if you look at the money behind this, JP Morgan, euros. They promised 5 billion euros to start this league, and then every founding club, which is like the 12 biggest clubs in the world, or 12 of the biggest clubs in the world, and I don't mean just biggest in like fan base, but biggest is as in revenues and monies, would be guaranteed 3.5 billion euros just year one.
Yeah.
And they never have to leave. So then they would have at least 300 million euros every year just because they're in the league. And then they would deign to maybe add 5 more teams to that, to the tournament. And that would mean that they never have to actually spend enough money to be competitive in any of the other leagues, right? And that just sort of that increases the profit that the owners can make on the team.
Yeah.
So
Can you highlight Gilgash's comment? You know what's really pathetic? In the last couple of days, my knee started hurting.
oh, you're getting old, man.
No, it's happened to me before. The first time I experienced this was December, like mid-January 2009, when I was at the Obama inauguration. That was one of the worst days of my life. It was so fucking cold. We were out in the National Mall, and fucking Obama wouldn't come out until like hours and hours. Like I had to make an entrance. I was like just like trying to breathe into my coat, trying to stay warm.
So
And
you're blaming
afterward-
Obama for the fact that you have a trick knee. Is that what you're saying?
And then obviously like there's no public transportation because they closed down all the streets, so we had to like walk through tunnels all the way back.
Thanks,
And-
Obama.
Yeah, really. And I was wearing these boots that had very poor ankle support, and I think all that walking, I don't know if anyone else has experienced this, but when you're walking, you like lift your knee, it just kind of has like stings a bit. So yeah, I mean, I've been trying to just stay off of it, but I think it's
Exactly. Thanks, Obama.
has anyone seen the Seinfeld episode The Summer of George?
Yeah.
Yeah, remember how he slips on the invitations after Susan dies, and then
Yes.
and the doctor tells him you might not walk again because your legs have atrophied through extreme inactivity. I feel like that's where I'm at. It's like all year extreme inactivity.
That's our year and a half of extreme inactivity.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jess is wondering, no 420 love in the room. Yeah, I don't, even though marijuana was declared legal in New Jersey, you can't really buy it anywhere legally yet because they haven't worked out the structure and the licensing. So the only thing I have is this like Delta 8 gummies, and they just knock me out. So I'm just asleep. So I'm not going to do that. But yeah, it's a good question. It is 4:20. Probably best to do something, but I don't have any on hand where I'm just not going to fall asleep. And I don't think viewers want to see me just, asleep on this live stream. So
Yeah.
But yeah.
I'm not a weed guy. I never really liked it that much. So it's like a good sleeping aid. I'll sometimes do
Yeah.
it. Yeah. But I don't like, especially around people. I don't like doing it around people.
No, I swear it's not Fed talk. I swear. But yeah, so here's Teen. All right, here is Teen. All
Hey,
right.
what's up?
Hello.
Sorry, I'm very dark right now because I didn't have time to set up my lights and everything.
All right. But yeah, so I don't know. Maybe we can start talking about Andrew Yang. I know that it's sort of, and I put in the description that it's sort of like this odds or sort of unique appeal that Andrew Yang has, because New York City politics, and I think New York City mayoral campaigns, are never really about policy, right? It's sort of about,
I mean, it never is at any
Yeah.
level. Yeah.
yeah. So, but like Andrew Yang has this sort of like, I don't know, Asian Chad appeal in a sense. Like he's sort of, even with all of his math and nerdy sort of veneer, he just sort of, I don't know, like, can you explain what you feel his appeal is?
Well, the thing that's always fascinating about Andrew Yang for me is why does like the Asian male subreddit support him so much? Because if you look at all the things that he's done, there's so many things that should have disqualified him. For example, like the Washington Post op-ed that he wrote, in which he said, we should act more American. He pardoned Shane Gillis. Remember that?
Yeah.
He really doesn't talk about race at all. Especially about being an Asian male. And in fact, if he talks about race, it's often about the white working class. So my fascination has always been, why do they feel some kind of like bond with this guy? And it's not just because he's an Asian guy in politics. There's plenty of Asian guys in politics. They don't feel this way about
True.
Ted Lieu, who is like, relatively high profile for an Asian guy in politics, or what's his name? Is it Andy Kim or Andy Lee, the guy from New Jersey?
Lee, I think.
Is it
No,
Lee?
maybe it's Kim.
Well,
Kim.
whoever that guy is, there's him.
Yeah, Andy Kim. Andy Kim. He's a U.S. rep. Yeah.
Mark Takano out in California, and I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody, but these guys don't attach themselves to them like they do with Andrew Yang. So, like in Unbreakable, they say, if there is a guy who is like Bruce Willis, who is extremely strong, there must exist somebody who is extremely fragile.
That's right.
Like
the Samuel
Samuel Jackson.
Jackson's character, right?
Therefore, I always thought if Andrew Yang instills this much kind of blind love among some people for kind of confusing reasons, it must stand that he also inspires kind of blind hatred in some people. And I remember when he first started running, there was like in the Asian American subreddit, for whatever reason, they really did not talk about him, and I think he came to be identified as the candidate that Forbidden Sub likes. And thanks, Millie. Yeah, Andy Kim. So it's like, again, why does this seemingly kind of bland guy who never really even talks about race inspire these feelings among Asian Americans? And so that's what's fascinating about him. Like his policies, I don't even really know what his policies are, because he's no longer running really on UBI. It's like a mishmash of things like that. So I want to talk about it more from a kind of almost like a sociological angle. Like, why does he trigger some people in good ways and bad?
People have told me that they like Evelyn.
They like his wife.
They like his wife. They think she's really, quite a catch for him. And that gives them a lot of credibility as sort of Asian Chad. And that's the interesting thing about guys, right? Is that you say, oh, he's kind of Chad, but how is this possible? Because look at him. He's not particularly a good-looking guy. He's not a bad-looking guy, but I think he's a rather plain-looking guy.
Normal. Yeah.
Yeah. and he's smart, but like not super smart. He's funny,
successful,
but
not like uber successful, right?
Yeah, he's not like crazy successful. Yeah. He's like okay. He's moderate. I think a lot of people feel he overachieved with Evelyn.
Yeah,
and people have told me that. So.
I was gonna say also, Adam, it looked like you were drinking milk, like a wholesome, wholesome boy.
Yeah, I'm a wholesome boy, but it's not wholesome. It's the makgeolli. So we made more, teen. We made more makgeolli.
Very nice. The vid of him saying that there would be a church shooting of Asians within his generation. Yeah,
I was gonna mention that there is that sort of
gotten
base
around
video.
very much though.
Because that was
circulated very much.
That was like in 2018. I think it was some Lunar New Year event, like some Chinese American New Year event. So it was kind of closed doors. I mean, I wrote a piece for Plan A, but yeah, it was kind of went under the radar. One person I've heard Andrew Yang compared to is Lyle Landry. Now, if you're a Simpsons fan, Lyle Landry is the monorail salesman. So if you're not a fan, let me just explain this. So Springfield gets a windfall of money, and they need to find something to spend it on. And this huckster named Lyle Landry comes and he sells them the idea that their town needs a monorail, which is ridiculous because it's like a small town. And he's just like, he's fun, he's charismatic, and he's a little silly, and the townspeople fall for it. And I heard a lot of people compare Andrew Yang to kind of a huckster. When you dig like under the surface, it's like, okay, well, people call him like a tech guy, but he hasn't really. Yeah, that's Lyle Landry. He's not a tech guy. He made his money off test prep. He doesn't particularly have any political experience, definitely, but even his business stuff is not particularly shining. And I think he gets away with it because maybe he leans on being Asian, so people give him the benefit of the doubt. Oh, you know what? He's talking about this fancy thing called UBI, and he's Asian. He probably knows what he's talking about. But that in and of itself, I think, is something new. The Asian male huckster. Because I think if you think of like a stereotypical Asian guy in politics, he's either probably a good, dutiful. Right. I don't know if in like parliamentary politics we call them backbenchers. The people who just fill in the ranks.
The policy wonks.
No, not even the policy wonks. They're just there to make up numbers and vote the way you want them to. Either that or someone like some like evil Mandarin behind the scenes, like a John Yoo. But they are rarely ever the center of attention. In fact, taking up like an undeserved amount of attention. And I think that is what the Asian Chad appeal of him is. He's entitled, he's showy, he's flashy, and we haven't really seen anyone like him before. And I think kind of what both is appealing, makes him appealing to some Asian Americans, also very repulsive to other Asian Americans who think here's this like straight Asian male normie who he just went the straight and narrow path, went to law school and everything. He's not the type of person who should be some kind of Asian American leader. His trade-off is he took the safe path. He should live his nice little boba life in the suburbs somewhere. Whereas like the activists, the academics, the journalists, the writers, they're the ones who risked their futures and everything in exchange for being relevant and being the kind who can so-called cross over to the rest of America. But instead it's Andrew Yang and him. So, well, that's my theory. And of course, there are legitimate reasons. I would say the rare minority who really do care about like policy and the wonky people. Yes, let's not forget about them. But I think the vast majority of people, they're not about policy. It's about what they just intrinsically feel.
Yeah, no, I think that makes some sense. I mean, I think there's at least one other Asian American man in the race that I'm aware of, and that's Art Chang. But he has much more of like the traditional sort of credentials. He's been involved in New York City politics and things like that, and he sort of is much more of a straight shooter, and that like he just is like, I want to help the city and whatnot. But I don't dislike Art Chang. I think he'd be a fine mayor as things go, but he doesn't have the flair of a Yang. And it's sort of weird saying that Yang has flair, but like
he doesn't have flair. He has nothing like approaching.
But he has something, because like he'll do
I think he has nothing. I think that's why he's popular.
Okay.
I think that he's it's like that Ronnie Chang comedy special where he was like, we should get Asian people to come and run this country because, we're not wedded to either side. We're not part of this black-white race war that y'all are in. Like we don't care. We just want shit to work, and so get us to run your country for you because we just want the trains to run on time or whatever. I mean, that's what he is. Like, I think he's appealing to that idea that Asian people are good managers, and I think the key to the Asian guy is like, he's not white. So non-white people will be like, well, at least he's not white. But then he's Asian, and he's like that kind of Asian. He's like the Columbia Asian that white people trust.
Credentialed enough. Okay.
Yeah, so he's appealing to both sides. And if you think about it, I think he's a little bit of like the last 3 New York City mayors. It was Giuliani, Bloomberg, and then de Blasio, right?
Right.
So Giuliani was the law and order guy. Bloomberg was the pro-business guy, and de Blasio sort of the social justice guy, right? Roughly speaking, those are their brands.
Yeah, those are broadly.
And he's all three, right? Going in reverse order. He's social justice. He's Asian. Actually, I think all the anti-Asian hate crimes right now actually go in his favor, because people who are sort of on the justice vote look at him and say, "Oh, here's a guy that understands," right? And then with the pro-business stuff, he's always going around. He's so blandly pro-business.
I mean, he talks about turning New York City into a Bitcoin hub.
Yeah, shit like that, right? And or he's like, yeah, hey, these street vendors got to get licensed. I mean, come on, what the fuck, right?
Right.
And then, and he wants to make a blockchain hub out of Manhattan or whatever. It's weird Silicon Valley bullshit. And then he's got the law and order stuff. He's pretty pro cop, but no one, it's all he's whatever you want him to be, and he's not much of any of those 3 things. So he's, I think, the kind of Asian person where I don't think you look at him, you don't know what side he falls on. You don't know what to expect from him. And that's exactly, I think Wesley Yang was, when he was talking about Andrew Yang's appeal, he was saying like, oh, that's, Asian people exist in that liminal space, right? That favorite phrase of everyone's, the liminal space. I think that's true of Andrew Yang. I don't think he has a flesh or any sort of star power at all. I think he is exactly that bland, at least to America at large. Asian guys may look up to him and say, wow, how did he get so famous? But I think to the broader society, his appeal is exactly because he is bland.
And they can project whatever they want on him.
Yeah, he's whatever you kind of want him to be. And he's eager to please.
But he has that talent for just getting attention and just somehow, even if it's bad attention, he somehow just kind of, it must be infuriating for his opponents, because he's just like smiling and just like prancing his way through everything. And I think that's precisely what makes him appealing to some Asian Americans, that he is for various reasons, he has the whole city talking about him, for good or for bad. And for Asian Americans, especially Asian American men, we're not supposed to be relevant. We're not ever supposed to be worthy of talking about. And I think that's simply it. He's just a guy who sucks up all the attention. And even though he doesn't seem particularly charismatic, he's not like blindingly attractive. He's like the kind of guy you probably know if you're a typical Asian American. Yet somehow he's the talk of the town, and that's probably his appeal.
I think they should be worried about that, though, because it's a pretty cynical idea that an Asian guy is whatever you want him to be.
Oh, it is. Yeah. I mean, we're not saying we agree with that. It's just sort of.
Yeah. And I think that a lot, to the extent that they're like, oh, yeah, he has that sort of. I mean, he has political skill for sure. Like he is able to make himself relevant.
That's sort of what I mean by flair, right? Like he had a picture today where he was in one of those like Breaking Bad white like jumpsuits, and he was at
I saw that.
And he was at a pot, like he was at like a weed growing facility, and he was like, we must, and he made some dad joke thing about like bud.
Yeah, he's pure
stuff
dad
like that.
joke. It's great.
But like that's what I mean by flair, right? Like there's no other candidate in the mayoral race that's going to actually go to one of those places and suit up for that and then go out in social media and make that dad joke, right? So yes, it's not exactly cool, but there's a political savvy there, right?
It's like so uncool that it might be kind of cool.
Yeah, he's anti-cool. Yeah.
So that's what I mean
he's
by that.
ultimate normie, and I think that's what drives some people crazy.
Yeah.
He was
He's comforting. I
He was
think the
fucking seasons
normie.
of love when he was dropping off his signatures. You cannot get more normie than that in New York City.
Yeah, I think he's comforting for a lot of people. Everyone kind of knows an Andrew Yang, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. I grew up with Andrew Yang. We all went to school with guys like that, right?
I literally almost went to school with him. He was only a few years above me.
Here's a personal story about Andrew Yang.
Yeah.
He actually, my piano tutor and the one that my brother went to for a much longer time lived on the same street as Andrew Yang.
Your brother's piano tuner?
Tutor.
Oh, tutor.
And we went to and one of the piano recitals was at the Yang house.
Okay.
So we were in their house.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. I mean, so it's like there's like, and my mom loves him because she has this personal connection to a guy who has national attention.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think he can win actually.
Oh,
I don't. So. Why would you even want the job?
Well, that's my thing. Mm-hmm. It's like my sense. I just kind of wish he never entered the race because the worst thing is he can actually win. And again, he seems. I think he's too nice for the job. I think you got to be a real son of a bitch to succeed there. And
succeed.
I'd like him to win. I just don't think that it would be an enjoyable job. I mean, I think it would be, quite. I was saying this about like Obama, right? Like, you know how a lot of people are a lot of black people I know are saying that, in retrospect, Obama was kind of a, kind of a sellout, kind of a racial sellout. And I can see that totally.
Absolutely.
But here's the thing. He was actually president.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, yeah, he was a racial sellout, fine. But the dude was literally the fucking president. And for me, it's kind of like, okay, I have my problems with Andrew Yang and his policy, and I don't think he's a great candidate or anything, but like, if you're really going to have an Asian mayor of New York City, would that alone, I know this is the kind of representational politics that like people are quick to dismiss. And I think a lot of times it's because we know that we're not going to get it. So it's like, we might as well, Trevor was describing this kind of like the guy who like kind of downplays a girl that he can't get. Kind of like, she's not
right.
Sour grapes.
She's not that. Yeah,
sour grapes. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. She's not that hot anyway, right?
Yeah, she's not that hot anyway. That's because you didn't have a chance. So this is like your rationalization of that. But if you could actually have Andrew Yang as mayor of New York City,
it would mean something
for Asian Americans. Even with this shitty representational politics idea, I can't say that wouldn't be kind of exciting in its own weird way. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know what positives it would bring anything. I'm not sure that he would even do a great job. But it's harder. I'm just saying it's harder to dismiss that.
Yeah.
Like it was easier for me to dismiss him as a presidential candidate because there's no chance in hell he's going to win, right? At best, he could get a job in Biden's cabinet. And that's not exciting at all. There's already been Asian people in the cabinets of a Democratic president. But if he were to actually have a chance, that's so much harder to dismiss, don't you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, the one satisfaction I would get if he won is it'd be a big fuck you to like the media establishment that has clearly been extremely biased against him from the start, just like leaving him out of, polls and things like that.
Yeah.
But that would be more of like a purely emotional, short-lived reason.
He'll be a normcore icon for the ages. And he's canny enough to know that his appeal. I think he's smart enough and culturally with it enough to understand the nature of his appeal. That's the other thing about him is I think there's a lot of like Asian guys that do get some notoriety, but they don't quite understand that they're being laughed at. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think Ken Jeong kind of has that problem, right? Like, or they even knowing that they're being laughed at, there's nothing they can do to stop it. And so it's kind of cringy for a lot of Asian guys because we recognize that. But with Andrew Yang, he seems to be in on his own joke. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
like I think when he puts up a dumb tweet and people are attacking it, he'll just like make fun of himself on Twitter. I think he's like a greased pig. You can't catch him. Like all these people are trying to.
Well, yeah,
him,
I mean, he's not gonna know how to defend himself. But yeah, but Fan talks about how, in her comment here, she says Andrew Yang just reminds me of a guy in school who just wants to be liked by everyone, who makes him a terrible person to challenge power.
Yeah, I mean
that sort of relates to what Jess's comment about what does the NYPD have to say about Yang, and I think that they would like Yang. Like, he doesn't have a problem with the NYPD. Like, he's not really going to do anything to challenge sort of their budget or anything like that. So
I mean, that's what I meant. I think he's too nice for the job. You gotta. I mean, that's kind of why everyone hates De Blasio, right? Because he's seen as spineless. He just with the NYPD, he like tries to stand up to them, but the next day he apologizes or whatever.
Yeah.
So
this could be a case of the bamboo cliff or whatever. Like when your company's about to go to shit.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's like the company's gonna shit, so like you bring in the Asian guy or woman to try to right the ship, and if they don't, then it was going to shit anyway, so then they're the ones that are fired. And
New York City is completely bankrupt. It's COVID. The Manhattan is empty during the week. MTA is down 70-80% year on year. You get the Asian guy to step up.
So I mean, talking about like Yang and the NYPD, so like there's this New York Post article, and let me actually just share it here. Give me 1 second. So he was at a Stop Asian Hate rally in Chinatown, and he called for more funding for the NYPD's Asian Hate Crimes Task Force. So, if he's going to do that kind of thing.
That's him being a greased pig.
Yeah.
He's like, I say no to hate. And then more funding for cops.
So he's at a Stop Asian Hate rally, which, let me say, I do not like that slogan because it sort of grammatically makes it seem like we have to stop Asians from hating. But so he's like as you're saying, Teen, he's at this rally that's about like
I'll be right back. Getting another beer.
Go ahead. It's about like stopping hate against Asian people. But then he's saying, we need to spend more money for this volunteer anti-Asian hate crime task force that's part of NYPD.
Yeah.
So they're not going to have a problem with them at all. Like the police are like, oh yeah, this guy, he's not going to challenge our power.
He's completely anodyne. That's my problem with him. He just doesn't stand for anything, and he's kind of like a local politics Clinton right now. He's like fourth way. He can do it all. He wrote that thing saying like, look, I'm not going to get the image of a greased up Okja running around mucking
What were we saying about Okja?
Jess's comment. I'm not going to get the image of a greased up Okja running amok in Gotham out of my head.
Because you can't nail him down. He's a greased.
No, you can't. You can't. Like.
Oh, this is a strange tasting beer.
What is this beer? What is this?
Okosim. It's a Polish beer.
Okay, so it's probably a Pilsner or something like that.
Yeah.
Can you pour some in a glass so we can see what it looks like?
I don't have a glass, sorry, but they call it a full pale beer.
Yeah. It's a Pilsner.
Anyway.
But anyway.
All right, should we move on from Yang?
Yeah, so we're gonna. I mean, I guess, but it's sort of related to this. So, I think the other topic that we had on this, in our header, was about Ivy League worship, and I know, Teen, you had a lot more to say about that. But I say it relates to Yang because Yang is an Ivy League guy, right? I mean, he went to Andover. He went
Where did he go undergrad? Cornell,
maybe Brown. Oh, he went to Brown.
Okay.
So, he's an Ivy League guy. But anyway, Teen, you had thoughts about this.
No, Chris was about to say something.
Oh, I was going to ask, including people watching right now, just answering the comments. Have you already seen Operation Varsity Blues, the Netflix documentary on the college admission scandal? Just asking.
Someone recommended it. Oh, there we go. Yeah.
So Monica says that we should watch it. I haven't watched it yet. No.
Too, huh?
Oh yeah, no, it's entertaining. Yeah. It's like one of those documentaries where they dramatize a lot of it, so it's not just interviews and actual footage.
Okay.
They got Matthew Modine to play Rick Singer, who's like
really?
the main baddie. Yeah. Private
Matthew
Joker.
Modine,
Yeah, Private Joker from Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah.
And the evil,
that's a big get for a
and the evil scientist from Stranger Things, at least season
Yeah.
one.
Oh
Yeah, he is.
That's right.
Modine was a big star in the 80s. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I heard your pod on it, Chris,
Mhm.
which is why I kind of wanted to bring it up because, someone linked like there's an MIT like estimated costs page, like it's like $77,000 estimated total cost to attend MIT.
Yeah.
It's totally insane, and you guys had a pretty good discussion about it, and I think Eliza was kind of like, just fuck these, like fuck the Ivy League, like what is why do people, and Chris is like, yeah, totally, but then Chris went there to an Ivy.
So did I, by the way.
Yeah, so did you. Yeah.
So this is the page, right?
I kind of had both experiences, even though. So I went to a state school for free, right? I didn't.
Adam, what are we looking at there?
So this is the MIT page, right? This is the cost of attendance. So
Yeah,
tuition per year is over 55,000. Housing is almost 12,000. Meals, like a meal plan, is almost 7,000. And if you add it up, the full price before any financial aid is over $77,000.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Anyway, Teen, you were saying?
Yeah, no, I just thought it's an interesting like position to be in, where Harvard is undeniably, sort of like this cultural lodestone in America, and it discriminates against Asian Americans. It has some sort of quota or cap, but it won't admit to it. It's infuriating to think about. But on the other hand, I think Eliza's point is right, that why the fuck would you want to go to a school that so clearly doesn't want you? Someone's asking if you can zoom in on the text.
Yeah, I know. I have a widescreen monitor, so I'm trying to get in there.
Yeah. So it just seems unresolvable, because it's like, on the one hand, I feel like that kind of discrimination against Asian applicants it's fucked up. I mean, seriously, like, to tell Asian students, and I don't care about I am generally pro affirmative action, and I just think that for Asian students to be told that, one, you have to score, 150, 200 points higher than a non-Asian student, including white students,
Mm-hmm.
to have a shot of getting into here because of your race. This is the thing this is the standard that you have to meet, and that you have to be okay with that. And if you think that that's fucked up, it actually gets flipped on you to say you're the racist for questioning that. Like, that's so fucked up. That's such a bad position to be in. And but on the other hand, the other option is to sue, which kind of tips your hand as to how badly you want to go there. It's like that Frasier thing, where like the more like a club doesn't want them, the more they want to be in. So it is like bootlicking to the highest order,
Oh, Tina, you might be talking about the Frasier episode where they buy the restaurant and they're trying to make it so exclusive that they're like, we're not even going to advertise it and everything.
No, there's one where they go to a spa, and every time they go to a spa, there's another door that that is like the next exclusive level. And then they keep like angling and bribing to get their way through the door until there's this one final door, and they finally like bribe their way, or they sneak through something to finally see like what the ultimate exclusive room is, and it's just like a exit to the alley.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is a sort of neurotic take too, but sort of the whole like Woody Allen sort of saying where he's like, I don't want to be part of a club that would take me. Like, I don't know, maybe that's is that a healthier perspective? I don't know. But
well, the thing is, it's all well and good to take the high road and be, I don't want to go to a place that will discriminate me, but it's all for nothing if you're just giving them what they want. And see, that's the thing where, like, the problem is these schools are selling themselves on the idea that they want some kind of demonstrated talent, right? Whether it's academics, arts, or whatever else. But what they're really doing, just like they were doing in the old days before, like all the reforms by like Kingman Brewster and all that, is they're just molding the next elite class. It's still a social class, and they're grooming the next leaders. If you ever look at the brochures, if you ever look at their selling material, they never say we want the smart kids. We're like, no, we want more than the smart kids. We want the next generation of leaders. So by that standard, they're entitled to do whatever they want. They can just pick someone they just like because they like the cut of their jib, because that's what they're doing. They're just picking their friends or whatever.
And that's also why like legacy is so important to them.
Well, yeah, but they can't come out outright and say that because I don't know that they're not supposed to be like that anymore.
Not anymore, right? They can't say it quite so much anymore.
As I said, like in the '60s and all, they like the revolution where they now wanted more academically inclined people because there are too many stupid kids of rich, the rich northeastern elites coming in. So that's why students are so confused. Like, oh, wait, you're telling us that you want like the best and the brightest, but really, you just as I said, you're just molding some class in your image. Yep. And I think if Asian Americans are going to step away from that and say fuck you, then you have to then take away their power to mold that class. Then you take away their power and they'll just become, you can have all your nice campuses and all that, but if you let go of your grip on pretty much everything from the Supreme Court, the government, to Hollywood, to the tech industry, to the financial industry, to law firms, all that, if you let go of that, then fine. Why should we go to your school anyway? But for us to just be like, all right, basically we're saying you win. You've demoralized us so much that we're just going to walk away. That is just capitulation. I don't think that's right. So if we're gonna walk away, we gotta like get something in return. But overall though, I think, we see this with, when we talk with people like Mtume and T, just like why is Black, or at least certain aspects of Black culture, why are they becoming so much more like Asian American culture? And it's because if you look at the backgrounds of a lot of the Black influencers and people in culture, a lot of them went to these schools, and that's why one of the reasons I think they were so harmful. That it's hard to describe, but you kind of know it when you see it. It breeds this disdain, I think, within like minority communities. It creates tears, which is exactly what the point of them was. What was the fucking point of the Rhodes Scholarship? It was to extract the most talented of the people from the dark corners of the world, anglicize them, and return them to like civilize their own people in their own image. So yeah.
You're right, though.
I think it's gotten harder to say no because, like, I think you guys had a good discussion about this. Like, it used to be that Harvard was like a feeder into like law and academics and the boring shit, and cultural relevance. Like that was the domain of sort of like this sort of staid conservative professional class, or intellectual class, and the cool contemporary cultural relevance was found outside of this stuffy institution.
No, exactly.
Gentrified, where they dominate everything now. Not only is it they've retained all the old stuff. If you want to go into high level government, high level corporate executive suites or whatever, you still got to go there.
If you want to get like 5 minutes at the Comedy Cellar, you need a fucking like PhD in comedy from like the Yale School of Drama. It's fucking ridiculous.
Well, you need to have been in Dog Day Players, where Mindy Kaling was the head of
the
improv comedy group.
Is that the Dartmouth thing?
Yeah, that's the Dartmouth improv comedy group. You need to be part of that, and you need to be part of like other stuff, right? Like there are a lot of people. I mean, I think the Ivy League has always had more influence in that sort of these cultural institutions than people might have thought. But yeah, certainly they've decided that they need to take over fully, because they can't let the people sort of do that stuff on their own. They need to go in and dictate now. But yeah, it's it's a tough call because I can't exactly fault any Asian person or any Black person or Latino person who's like, I want my child to go to an Ivy League school. I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, why not? Like it's a good school and potentially that's going to help them, in their professional careers. So
yeah,
I mean, what are we going to say? Like you should sacrifice yourself to some sort of like idea that maybe if we don't believe in that stuff, they'll lose their power. Like I can't tell someone that. Like, what is that going to do?
Pogo935 said, is tech really controlled by the Ivies? I think technically it's controlled by like Stanford and MIT and Caltech, but by Ivy
Those
is
are
not
the same things.
Ivy is not literally the Ivies. I mean,
Stanford
half
and
the
Caltech
schools,
and MIT are.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, half the schools in the Ivies are not even considered that elite anyway by the true snobs. So it's just a catch-all term for elite school. So yeah, not literally the Ivy League. Most people
and
probably
they're not
don't
all
even know
equal,
which
right?
school. Yeah, most people probably can't
definitely.
even name which school is in it. I was going to say something, but somebody jump in.
Sorry, I was.
Social class reproduction.
Yeah, Fan was talking about. Yeah, but that's what we're describing, right? Is that they're reproducing their own social class.
Yeah,
and but I guess what I've noticed is, there used to be like, Chris, something you said was really rang true, was like that being in an Ivy is now the end now the end goal. That the whole point of it is just to be there. It's not in preparation of something else.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's outdated to think, you know what, you can go to like even like a JUCO, transfer into a community college, and guess what? You're gonna end up at the same bank or law firm as some guy from whatever Princeton, and it's all the same in the end. No, it's not all the same in the end, because it's that experience there in and of itself that is valued.
Yeah.
It's that thing that is sold as like the best 4 years of your life. It is, people you'll meet, stories you'll have that you'll
right. And it's not because of the classes you take and the knowledge you gain.
Everybody knows
the academic knowledge.
The academic is all bullshit. All the famous professors, you'll be lucky if you even look at them for 2 seconds, let alone have a conversation with them. They're too busy doing their own thing, trying to get Nobel Prizes. You'll probably be taught by a TA who's getting paid like $5 an hour. So we all know that's bullshit. You're just there for the experience, and that's right. The prize in and of itself. And then and what you do afterwards is all downhill from there, because now you got to mix with the plebes. So yeah,
potentially. But yeah, Jess is right. I mean, finance, which is what has been my career for the last 10, 15 years, is I mean, on the front lines, on the customer facing side where people care, it's going to be heavily Ivy. Like, people want to know that their banker or the trader that they're working with or whatever went to the right school. No one wants to work with someone who went to a state school at a certain level in finance. Now, the people who are middle office, who actually make the firms run, even IT, stuff like that, there's going to be a little bit more diversity. But even then, it helps, right?
I mean, I think it's...
I'll quickly say, Teen, you'll notice, like, with law school, the top firms won't even visit you if they won't even interview you, give you a chance if you don't go to like the top 14 schools, most of which they're all Ivies. I mean, half of them, I think.
Though the relevance of Columbia, like I went to Columbia Law, the relevance of the law school is not about being there. It is to get the job. Like no one's I can't wait to spend 3 years at Columbia Law. These are going to be the best 3 years of my life. Like,
it's a quid pro quo, right?
I think
you give them the money, and then with the law firm, they'll get to put in your profile, this guy went to Columbia, so that it can justify charging like $600 an hour, billing that out to some
I want to make, and this is something that, because like more and more, I don't know if more people are going to law school now or less. I hope it's less, but
I think it's more.
Well, that's unfortunate. Okay, I mean, just to be clear, like, so because I went to like a state school, and then I went to an Ivy for law school, and so this is just like information for younger Asian people that are thinking about this stuff. Law school is not a blue-blooded institution. Like J.D. Vance and that whole what is that? Hillbilly Elegy? I don't know if people have seen that movie.
It's actually lower. Sorry, it's lower than in 2010, which was like the peak.
It should be lower. Yeah. So this is to Pogo. Yeah. Speaking about our own Ivy experiences, I had both. My experience though with the Ivy is different because it's law school, and I think people need to understand like the hillbilly elegy idea of this guy going to Yale Law, and Yale Law is this blue-blooded thing where everyone's all connected. It's not true. Law school is a very working class kind of thing in the relative scheme of things. In my first day at Columbia, the professor that was teaching our section said, please raise your hand if you're the first person in your family to go to law school. I think about 95% of people raised their hand. So only 5% of people even had parents that were lawyers. And then they were like, okay, keep your hand raised if you were the first person in your family to go to college. And it was like 35% of the people in my section, they were the first person in their family to go to law school. So law school is a class elevator type of thing, but you got to work your ass off. I think MBA program is a little bit more blue-blooded than it's a little bit more connections based and grift based, and a little bit more like
it's Ivy. A lot less knowledge based than law school.
Yeah, law school is just it's still rigorous fucking training, and no one really wants
to get into law school.
If you're like wealthy and connected, you don't go to the law school. The law school is where all the class aspirants want to be. You know,
I'll say this. So I had a kind of unique entree into the Ivy League realm, right? So for anyone who doesn't know, who's on the pod, who's watching, I was adopted, right? So I was born in Korea, and I was adopted to a white family in the suburb of New York City, very upper middle class, and I'm a legacy to Ivy League. My dad went to Dartmouth. I went to Dartmouth. My brother went to Dartmouth. So we're, as those things go. But my dad was sort of the first in his family to go to one of those schools. He was Jewish. So, we could do a whole pod about like sort of the similarities of Asian American discrimination, Asian discrimination and Jewish discrimination in America. But in the 60s, when my dad went to college, there was the same sort of quota level for Jews at Dartmouth as there was for Asians, and so I'm an Ivy League kid, but I'm not like one of those guys that that had a building named after us or anything like that. But it's different. Like, so Teen talks about how like Columbia law is sort of much more of a working class thing. I think some of the stereotypes around Ivy Leagues being about like blue bloods and tons and tons of private school kids, it's true to an extent. I still remember like the first weekend I was there, and we were at orientation, and we were just sort of lining up to get information. And I would talk to people, and I talked to this girl who was in front of me, and we're just saying hi, we're all here. And then she's like, where'd you go to school? I'm like, oh, I went to a public school in New York. And she just turned around and just ignored me. And I never talked to her again, ever. Because she had gone to a private school. And that's, that happens. That happens. So, but in general, I had a good time. But Dartmouth is they're there to protect their image. And there were some instances where, a friend of my brother, he was accused of, horrible things, and he didn't do any of it, but he was railroaded because he was poor, he was black, and he was there because some white guy had basically just paid for him. But because he got in trouble, he was accused of, a crime, they dropped him. And Dartmouth wasn't like, oh, we're going to try to keep you there. No, they're like, bye. So, a lot of this stuff is real. A lot of like the stereotypes and these things that, it happens.
Yeah. So I went to Brown, and the reason I really wanted to go there was it was supposed to be like the Ivy that was really not like the Ivies. It prided itself a lot on being more loose, more free spirited, and all that. But then you get there and you realize it's really not like that. So that was the biggest adjustment period. You go there and you expect everything to be, I don't know, based on merit. Everyone's there, so you're past. Everyone starts from the same square one and all that, but then you realize it's not, and then you spend a few years being in denial, and then you realize, okay, this is how the world works, and so it's like that. Long story short, so yeah.
Actually, I actually disagree that on the finance, at least on the finance side of this, that you need to go to an Ivy. Finance is another one of these fields that I've found is a lot more working class in character than it is blue-blooded. I think it has an image. I think it has an image of being a very rarefied elite place. But when you start meeting people who are traders and go on any trading floor, very few people actually went to like.
I've been on the trading floor. I've worked there.
Yeah,
it's
very
tons
few,
of Ivy League guys.
Yeah, no, but it's a ton of people that haven't gone there.
Yeah, so there are some.
I don't think it's at all like just go talk to some equity traders. I mean, they're not. That lifestyle is not really the kind of lifestyle that I think a lot of Harvard kids want. And
I think if you come from money,
I disagree a bit.
I think if you come from money already,
it's anecdotally true. I mean, a lot of these guys went to like East Coast Catholic schools and stuff. Like you'll see, the even especially like equity trading has never really been blue-blooded, which is why I think they celebrate Catholic holidays on the exchange. There is like, I guess with like wealth management and like some of that stuff, like you got to get in front of like,
maybe
the actual trading functions. And I've met tons of traders because I've worked in on the sell side. Not very blue-blooded at all. It's not an elite. It's not like an elite boys club. It's a working man's
I'll disagree with you because I've worked directly on the trading floors and I've worked.
Yeah, it's just not the feeling. It's not like a. It's just not like a. This is a blue blood. We talk about our Ivy traditions all the time. They don't.
Well, no, but that doesn't mean that it's not blue blood.
No, but they did. They literally didn't go to Ivy League schools. They went to like Villanova. There's like a.
Yeah, but there's always some exceptions. Look, I mean, we had different experiences, maybe, but
Yeah, I just don't think. I think what I'm saying is that a lot of in law too. Yes, they generally are looking for top law schools, but it's not a lot of like law firm associate people. Like they are the first in their family to do that, and they didn't come from a particularly wealthy or connected background or anything like that. So it's not totally true. And there's some that are pretty well connected, I guess, but overall, I think a lot of these industries. I'm not sure the same is true of medicine as well. These are still very meritocratic, elbow grease kind of things. I think that if that's the goal for people, I don't think going to an Ivy is at all necessary. I think going to like a solid university, like a state school or some other thing, would be perfectly fine. I think it's like those culture industries. We're getting into like these top tier tech, like the stuff that's culturally relevant. Like working for Goldman Sachs is not culturally relevant anymore. Nobody gives a shit about that. That's been done for the last 10 years. Nobody cares about.
I agree with that. It's not,
nobody cares about being.
If anything, you might have to keep that on the down low.
Yeah.
If you're at a dinner party and they ask you where you work, you'll be like, I work at Goldman.
Yeah, it's lost the luster for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's lost its luster. Medicine, being a doctor has lost its luster.
Being a
like
lawyer
a lot of
has
these,
lost the luster too.
I think a lot of these professions, when you talk about overproduction of elites, I think that dilutes the value, the sort of social cachet of being in the professional class, and being an attorney or a doctor doesn't mean shit anymore.
Yeah, nobody's impressed by lawyers.
Nobody's impressed with lawyers. No one brags about that shit. You admit to it.
Justice.
Yeah, you admit to it.
You just admit to it.
Yeah, and these days I think you admit to working in finance as well.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Some of tech has lost its luster. I think you kind of admit to working at Facebook now. It's getting there. I think it's still better. You would still rather work at Facebook than at Goldman.
You would still work at. Yeah, you'd still rather work at a FANG. You'd still, I think, admit that more. But I was talking to a recruiter for Facebook, I think it was. And I asked her straight up because I think it was a couple years ago, and something had come up like recently in the news about how crappy it was to work at Facebook, or maybe it was something about how they were contracting for like the facial recognition stuff or something. And I asked her straight up, like, is it tougher now to recruit for Facebook because it's not seen as cool, right? It's just not like, you don't want to admit it. And she said, yes, it's harder to get talent because now you have to sort of explain to them. You have to pay them more, even more, to work there, because they're like, well, if I'm going to work at Facebook now and tell people I work there, I better be making, multiples of what I would have been making.
Yeah, that's like law firms.
Yeah.
I think the true marker of elite status now is cultural relevance.
Bingo. Yeah, exactly.
I really think that there's a horror, like, in America, especially now, like, work is being devalued to such an extent that it's work is not an esteemable thing.
Mm-hmm.
No one admires you for working. No one rewards you for working. You get looked down on for working, right?
Yeah, honestly, I never understood. People talk about I'm so embarrassed to be on unemployment or whatever. I never understood that. Be like,
it's fun employment, baby.
Yeah, just take it. You're paying into it. What's the shame?
Yeah.
But I totally agree. It is cultural relevance that is the true marker of elite status. Like, you watch something like Operation Varsity Blues, like all those kids who got in there, they're not going into medicine. They're not going into law.
Nope.
They're probably going to, like, if they're going into something that could be considered, real work, maybe something like journalism, but chances are they're going off and founding fucking art galleries, or
well, they don't need to work. They don't even go to school at all, right? It's just like, why are they even going to college?
I think a cool ass job these days would be to be like VP of development at Amazon Prime
Netflix.
Video.
Yeah, no, Netflix.
Yeah, like something like
VP
that.
for social.
What does
social
fucking
consciousness
Harry do when it comes to America? He and Meghan Markle, they go into tech and Netflix. That's the new royalty. That's the new aristocracy.
What is his job title?
He's a chief impact officer.
Chief impact officer. I was going to say chief social impact officer or some shit.
Oh my god, that's the best they could come up with. That is hilarious.
But people are like, even I had to chuckle because people online were like, even Prince Harry has to get a job now. It's like, no, he doesn't have a job. What are you talking about? He doesn't.
No, he's just a face. He's the title. He's just a company that says, yeah, we have a royal on our board.
Yeah. I think underlying that is, it's not just that working at Amazon like program development or whatever for this streaming shit is great. I think it's understanding that work is not cool. Like, no one is in America is going to look up to you because you work your ass off for no pay.
Right. And the whole FIRE thing wouldn't be a thing if people really cared about work, right? Because the whole financially independent, retire early is about how you don't need to work. Yeah, so back in the 50s, that never would have been acceptable. But now,
because I think that people rightfully recognize, and people think it's a cultural deficit. I think it's a structural deficit. People recognize that you cannot work your way into prosperity.
Right.
Okay. The cost of housing is going to escape you.
Right.
And you're not going to catch up.
So hasn't that always been the case? Yes, to an extent it has. But
no, it hasn't always been.
But it hasn't always been to the extent that it is now, right? Because back, maybe 100 years ago, right? Yes, people valued the fact that you work for a living. It was a point of pride, and people really did value the fact that you did something, you got a wage, and you could support your family. And like Team was pointing out, you could actually do that, right? You could go to work hard, and earn enough money to buy a house and to support a family and send your kids to college. That was possible. And it was seen, and the cultural propaganda is that was desirable and it was valued and by valued I mean not just as like people patting you on the back, but they paid you for it. You got a wage, you got money for it.
I don't think it was just cultural propaganda; it was true.
But it was true.
And
right?
I think the reason it was.
Go ahead, Chris. So anyway,
No, and to bring it back to what we were talking about, Teen, before you got here, the European Super League, I think this is why it united everybody from Boris Johnson, Emmanuel Macron, to everybody.
Pep Guardiola was like, it's not sports, right?
The reason is, it is a perfect exemplification of this. So it's like, the people are West Ham, the people are Leicester City, the people are Sevilla, the people are Real Betis, in that they sell you the dream that if you work hard and you make the smart decisions and you find the diamonds in the rough and you challenge the big boys, they sell you the dream that you can too be a Porto and win the Champions League like in 2004 or whenever
you
it
could
happened.
be Leicester City and win Premier League, right?
But don't you think there's a proper cynic in football that's like, yeah, it's all bullshit though. Honestly, let's face it. I just want to watch Barcelona play Arsenal or whatever. Like, I don't give a shit.
But I don't want to. But I don't care if they suck and the game sucks, right?
But
I don't watch Barcelona Arsenal.
I think there are. That is real. I think especially if you're not, say, like a European fan. Like if you are somebody,
if you're an American style, I just want to see the best play the best.
I guess.
If you're, for example, an Indonesian fan who is a diehard fan of Manchester United just because they have great branding, you don't really care about the history of this and that. And I think that's what these owners were banking on.
No, right? No. What I'm saying is, what if isn't there like a proper cynic who's like, I love football, and it's already gotten to the point where this notion of defending, well, maybe not. I mean, maybe football and the relegation system actually does work and keeps a lot, because with Leicester City as an example, like that is a real world example of that actually working, right? Yeah. But I think when it comes to class, if that's, if we're trying to draw an analogy between the pyramid system in say England versus social class in America, I think it's probably easier to get promoted into the Premier League than it is to actually elevate yourself.
Exactly. That's why the European Super League pissed people off so much, because it was like, okay, you know what? Social hierarchies are ossified. We kind of know that, but hey, we got soccer, and this is a league where is that like a West Ham can knock Liverpool and Chelsea out of a Champions League, and then they pulled that rug out from everyone, and it even pissed off Chelsea and Liverpool fans, being like, hey, you know what?
We're not even in my fantasy sports life, and I have this. Illusion of ability.
It's reminding too much of my real life, where I can, no matter how hard I work, I can never really get ahead, and at least soccer was my one escape. And now you're even taking that away. So fuck you, I have to my own team.
I mean, yes, we can be super cynical about it, but I do think that at least, like, as a Spurs fan, right, a Tottenham Spurs fan, I don't want to win a league where I just win because I'm there and I sort of stack the deck against myself. And then, I never have to play the 10 other teams that could possibly beat me and then say, like, oh, I'm the world champion, right? I don't want that. Maybe some people do. Maybe some people don't care. Like, they're okay with that. But I think there are enough of the soccer fans who are like, I know I would be deluding myself into thinking that I'm the best just because I set myself up to win.
Especially since the last 2 weeks, we couldn't even beat Newcastle. So we know
so there's no delusions, right?
We know we can't beat these teams. So
So I mean, yes, yeah. I mean, UEFA, FIFA,
it's just
EPL,
because you're not
all that.
Properly motivated because you're in the Europa League or whatever. You're not bringing it back.
No, well, we were runners up.
Really good teams.
We were runners up in Champions League last year. Okay, so
you'll get these really good teams.
Two years ago. That was like 2 years ago already. Man.
No, but like great teams will go to the NIT and just flop out because they're like, I don't want to play for this.
Well, Duke didn't even go to the NIT.
Like, I'm not even
right?
gonna do this.
They're like, I'm not even going to go to the NIT.
Yeah. See,
I'm not gonna risk injury. I'm a lottery pick. Damn it! I'm not gonna risk injury.
Yeah. Anyway, I mean, going back to the class idea here.
Yeah.
I mean, it was different, Adam, because the economy was growing. There were actual, there was need for people to elevate themselves, right? And there was opportunity, because there was growth.
Yeah.
And I think the one thing that the simple fact that one has to keep in mind in terms of what kind of world we live in now is 2020 was, I think, the worst year for economic growth in like almost 100 years.
Right.
And it was the best stock market return ever.
I mean,
really?
billionaires made more money in the last 2 years than they have in the last like 20 years.
Year, you have both the highest rate of return on stocks and other assets, while you have the worst economic performance in terms of growth.
Absolutely, yeah.
In over 100 years. So those two things happening at the same time, what happens is you get a huge increase in inequality. Because who owns stocks? It's the rich people that own stocks.
The capital owners.
So it's the people who own the firms, the businesses. They're the ones, the Elon Musks of the world. He became the world's richest man just by sitting around. I mean, his company didn't do anything new to make him the richest man, right? So I think if you take that into account as to like what kind of world we're living in now, that it's kind of like for young people, it's almost like everyone is ascending this like cone from all sides. And as you go up, that you're just starting to run out of space and people just have to fall out. And your goal is to like hold on as long as you can until you fall out. And I think college admissions is one of those great filters where if you fail to get into one of the top relevant schools, it's not just the Ivies, of course.
No.
And it's not a clear cut which is relevant, which isn't relevant. I think there's a little bit of a gradation there. Like USC somehow is relevant. NYU is relevant, right? Yeah. But they're in the right cities. They attract the right kind of people.
Yep.
And
the right alumni, whatever.
Yeah. And so if the right alumni. So if you can get past that filter, you stay alive to fight another day. But I think I think the difference now is once you're out, it kind of feels like you're out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It kind of feels like the door really did close on you for a lot of shit. And I don't think it's the same old shit about like, oh, can I go work at a bank? Or can I be a doctor? Yeah, you can still do that. But the thing is, like, being a lawyer and being a doctor is just a fucking grind, just like anything else these days.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So in terms of actually living a cool, interesting, relevant life that, you know, where you can, quote, have an impact on society and not just be this person who grinds it out for a living, you know, trying to stay afloat. It's kind of scary, don't you think? Like, I mean, in a low growth environment, that's what the social.
No, exactly. And you know, you can tell. Look at which fields that like cancel culture is most prevalent in. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not
the cultural fields.
Right. It's not the fields where you actually know the most heinous shit is happening. Like the coked out stripper parties that you know is going on Wall Street like every night. It's not there. It's in fucking YA novels. Like where you get canceled because of like one sentence in your 300-page.
You didn't have enough sensitivity readers.
Was not kosher.
You know.
So that's how you know that you look at the culturally relevant yet precarious industries. That's where it's most just like psychotic. Whereas, you know, I think of all the you just think of. I don't know. You look at the imbalance of, say, the gender imbalance between nurses and doctors. You know shit's happening there. You never hear anything about that.
Yeah.
Because unless you know doctors, then you know what's going on.
And you know nurses and you know all that stuff. Yeah.
Or lawyers and paralegals, if you're an actual
lawyers and paralegals. You know, all that stuff.
It's almost just assumed in finance there's going to be shit, right?
we already know it. It's like we'd be surprised if it didn't happen.
Right. Exactly.
You never hear about it there.
Yeah. No, it's true.
Yeah. So I think a lot of it has to do with economics. And it's not, the solution is not going to be like a cultural solution. And I think we're looking, I don't know, we blame culture a lot. And a lot of times we're just like, oh, people these days are so fucked up and they're so, you know, oh, when did we coddle these? We didn't. Here's why I don't believe a lot of the right wing shit. That's why I'm fundamentally more sympathetic to the left always, because I do not think people are coddled these days.
Oh,
I think people are living their worst life, not their best.
No.
Okay.
I think sort of the opposite is true if you look at sort of what's being pushed, right? So there's a lot of this live your best life, self-care stuff. There wouldn't need to be that if people were living their best lives, right? So like that sort of is an indicator to me that we're living shitty lives. there's so much of that messaging.
I don't think it's good to just be like, because a lot of
cope more, right? Cope
I think
more
a lot
with
of
your
right-wing personalities will do this, which is just like, say, we've never had more food, and we like, like
we've never made more corn that we don't eat.
There's fucking oxygen everywhere.
Yeah,
shelter. There's shelter. So many roofs in America.
So many homes.
Yeah. As if kind of this idea that like materially, none of us are really suffering, which isn't true, but I don't think that's
what they're trying to get at, right?
Yeah, because I think human beings are like, I think social class and the social environment is actually very, very important. And if you don't get that right, people will be fucking miserable if you get the social situation. I mean, prisoners have all their needs taken care of.
Right. Well, yeah, they have food, they have shelter, they have entertainment.
So they're actually very well taken care of, but you would never want to be one.
No.
Because their social environment is utterly bare. They have no social environment. That's the ultimate deprivation.
Yeah.
And I think in a society where
that's why like solitary confinement and stuff
at the age of 18, that the basis of the rest of their lives is going to be determined by this college admissions process. It's pretty awful. I think that's like one of the worst parts of a lot of Asian societies, East Asian societies, that like kind of starts implementing this these hierarchical pathways based on where you get into college. We're starting to replicate that because I think we're becoming that, and in Asia they're getting away from that a little bit, at least in certain places, because at least where the economy is growing really fast. I think when the economy is growing fast, all bets are off in terms of your pathway. Because you just don't know. You don't know where opportunities are everywhere. There's more opportunities than there are people who can take advantage of them. And so, drop out. Don't go to college. I don't know. Whatever the fuck. Do what you got to do. Be practical about it. But that advice I don't think translates that well now to America, because it's kind of like all the good shit's already owned and gatekept. You're going to have to convince someone to let you in.
Right.
I don't think like it's an era where the individuals
them off their perch.
Right.
Or knock them off their perch.
Well, and I think that's why like so the whole disrupt stuff is a big thing in like tech, right? Because they realized that they needed to knock people off their perches that were already there, because they couldn't create, like, the tech had created their perches sort of early on, but like all sort of like the .com stuff, and then like the maybe like the mid 2000s and on, sort of Silicon Valley people were like, well, we're not gonna create our own Microsoft, so we have to try to like disrupt what's already been created. But even then, right? Because you could say like, well, someone like a Bill Gates or other people who or like Steve Jobs were like, oh, they dropped out of college, right? And they were able to drop out of college and not go that route. But that wasn't available to everyone, right? Like not every dropout of Harvard or not every MIT dropout started an Apple or a Microsoft, right? So I think that's also sort of a myth. The idea that like there was ever a time where anyone could sort of do whatever they wanted and drop out and become successful. Maybe it was a little bit more likely, but I don't think it was ever really like a common thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there's still a class elevator out there. I just think there's just a lot of fear of falling off because it's just less forgiving than it has ever been. And when you're in an environment, so if this was if people remember that book Capital by Piketty that came out many years ago, it's a huge book, but
did you read it?
I read part. You should.
I heard it's really boring.
It's very long.
Well, it's
lots of charts.
It's a textbook. Yeah. It's not really like a book. It's a textbook. But you can. I think the first few chapters are worth reading.
Okay.
Because it's a synopsis. You should read that. But it's very simple. His basic theory, just looking at historical data for centuries, right, and looking at inequality versus growth and these things. Very, very simple equation. There's two variables, R and G. R is the rate of return on financial assets, right? Like how much do your stocks pay in dividends, or how much do they increase in value? So R is the rate of return, and G is growth of the economy. And his simple equation is if R is greater than G, if the rate of return on financial assets is greater than the growth of your economy, then you get more social inequality or socioeconomic inequality.
It's not good.
It's wealth inequality, right? So that's the determinant. If R is greater than G, right, you get more inequality. The rich get richer, the poor get poor. And like I said, this year, R has never been greater than G to this degree. R is huge. R is
very big.
Tesla stock. R is the S&P 500. R is the NASDAQ, right? Huge, record-setting rate of return.
Yeah, I mean
that even market professionals couldn't predict. And G is the worst it's ever been. So R is the greatest ever been. G is the worst it's ever been. Inequality is going to be off the fucking charts.
And we've seen that.
It is going to be off the fucking charts in a society that has already off the charts inequality. It's only gotten worse because of COVID. Much worse.
Much worse.
We've got daily shootings now.
Yeah.
Every day we have shootings.
There was one today in I forgot where it was.
Long Island.
Yeah, Long Island.
In Long Island.
Yeah. People are losing their fucking minds out there.
Yeah.
People are like, what's going on? We don't know what's going on.
Well, yeah. You know what's going on is the billionaires making like $2 trillion, trillions of dollars. That's what's going on.
It's gotten so bad that Congress is actually passing spending bills. They're actually like, holy shit, we gotta get money to these people.
You know, stop people from shooting each other.
Yeah, they literally have to. I mean, I think part of the Chauvin, the trial, was the powers that be, the Minneapolis Police Department, realizing like, oh shit, we've got to sacrifice them.
They need to sacrifice Chauvin.
No. Yesterday they were trying to say that is grounds for a mistrial, saying that the jury knows that if they put in a not guilty verdict, that it will cause national chaos. Then that's
right. And the judge set that up, right? Because I read today that Maxine Waters said something about how people need to, stay, angry or she didn't say that, but like the people need to stay in the streets or like people need to have a strong reaction if, Chauvin got off, which he didn't. And then the judge was like, oh, Maxine Waters, her statements could be grounds for an appeal. Like sort of signaling to the defense, I'm like, that's ridiculous.
I doubt that's
ridiculous. No, it's not. I don't think there's any legal case for that. But
I mean, it is a thing where I think that
poisoning the jury.
Just going back to the original idea of this Ivy worship and how Asian Americans fit into this, because I think Asian Americans feel we tend to have a lot of like everyone else. I think we have a lot of class precarity and
we're not unique in that.
Yeah, and what Asians actually suffer from it the worst, right? Aren't Asians we have the biggest discrepancy or biggest?
We do. We have the largest
inequality.
I do think we have the largest wealth inequality gap.
Yeah, and so it affects us a lot, and I think that's been coming out lately, this understanding that there are really two Asian Americans and two Asian Americas. There's the haves and the have-nots, and the consequences of falling on the wrong side of that have never been greater. And the things that you got to do to stay on the right side of that have never been more difficult. And to find out that there's literally a racial quota put on us, in terms of our ability to enter that class, I cannot help but feel that the outrage about this is a bit more than just Asian people being greedy or Asian people being white adjacent. I think that this is a result of intense class competition and pressure in America that is not of our own personal doing, but which you can't avoid. And I find that it's very difficult to explain that to a 17-year-old.
Could you elaborate on that? I think I know what you're talking about, but I just want to make sure.
I mean, if you're 17 and you already have that inherent understanding that to stay relevant, because I mean, I think teenagers are very canny. I think they really understand what their future is going to be like based off of, what's happening among their peers. They're great social observers, and I think that now, much more now than even when when I was 17 or whatever, where it was like, okay, fuck Harvard, I'll do it another way, right? Now, to understand that there's a great filter when it comes to college admissions, and if you don't get past that filter, you're kind of out. Like, there's a whole world of possibilities just closed off to you now. At the age of 17 or 18, you have to just kind of like, that's your life. You're capped. And that's, I know, not 100% true, but that's true enough that it's a legit worry. And to have 17-year-olds, 18-year-olds confront that pressure, and to feel that there's something wrong with that because there's a racial aspect to it, to be like, oh yeah, see, it's a little harder to get through this barrier when you're Asian, you see, because there's too many meritocratic Asians. Like, there's more to the game than just meritocracy. You have to have good personalities, and you all have shit personalities. Like, you have to internalize that. And if you refuse to internalize that, and you're like, no, you know what, I am generally like support progressive politics, and I understand this need for increasing spaces for underrepresented minorities, but this still feels wrong to me. Who is speaking to that? Who's like helping that kid understand what is going on with him or her? You know what I mean? Because I don't think Asian American progressive activists give a fuck. First, most of them are already in the academy. Most of them have already gotten through the filter.
Yeah,
Right.
that's the most galling thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Somebody who graduated from like a Columbia telling the 16-year-old person who Asian American who wants to go, like, you know, someone goes to say STY or like Brooklyn Tech or something. You know what? It's actually racist for you to want to go to
Harvard, right?
It's just so fucking galling.
That's sort of what I was getting at earlier when I was like, how can you tell that person like you don't want to go to Harvard? Like, just
and or like criticizing all these class drivers for all these Asian people that just want to go the Ivy so they can become doctors, lawyers, and engineers, a model minority type. Like, okay, that shit is so fucking outdated. We need, like, they just dropped that shit. Like, that's like some shit that they wrote in the 70s or 80s. Like, it's not
for sure
relevant anymore in that sense. And like, why would you talk that way about people who are trying to go to the school that you teach at? Like, you work there. There's no one more like Ivy striving than the people who actually
went
there.
Went there, worked there, owe their entire careers to their connections.
To the fact that they have that connection, right?
Are publishing books and shit because they have that position. I mean, all like the fucking like novelists and shit.
Oh yeah,
don't get me started.
Don't get me started on that.
What happened to because back in the day, wasn't it people who did the most drugs wrote the best books or whatever? Like, the most down and out people were the ones that like actually had something to say. And these stuffy like ivory tower people could.
With a few exceptions, it was like the losers of society.
Right.
And that's, I mean, Teen, you and
like
Jess
the
had
drunks and the fucking like
the great pod, bonus pod. If you're not a
Patreon subscriber,
let me be a salesman. You're right here. If you're not a subscriber, great pod. A lot of our bonus pods are excellent. All of them are. So it was a lot of the times the losers of society, and now they're all the like, you know, they have the right credentials. They're essentially they're just like not that removed from being like, you know, like an accountant or a lawyer. They just happen to go, instead of an MBA, they go an MFA. And as usual, as expected, none of their stuff has real artistic merit.
But it's still cooler getting published than it is being
not being published. Yeah,
that book, which you all reviewed too on Verified Accounts, was a great book too. The David Graeber Bullshit Jobs, because that is the reality of class striver work. Like, if you want to work your way up the ladder, you've got to. I mean, it's soul crushing. I mean, literally, like, I have spent days crafting an email, a cover your ass email.
I have too.
That has gone through rounds of
haven't we all?
Like, I've had to, like, you know, like, you get.
I've had to workshop emails because we got to make sure that our email to our very, very sophisticated and smart and, you know, adult salespeople doesn't offend them.
Or intercompany bullshit. Like
that's what I mean. Intercompany stuff.
Fucking
or intercompany.
Literally crafting emails so that we would make sure that we weren't responsible for the fuck up that happened, or like whatever.
Absolutely,
like, that's white collar work. Okay, like it is soul crushing. It is very, very not glamorous.
No,
it's without purpose. But I think that book was really great at exploring.
Yeah,
like
and I think we're actually
what is the term? It's not quite hell. It's this sort of like limbo. This purgatory. And the whole time you think you're, you think you're going somewhere because you're working so hard, but you've gone nowhere. It's like
you're on a literal treadmill because you're not going anywhere. You're running really hard, but you're in the same place.
So you feel a little bit better about it.
But hopefully it's not a Peloton where it crushes your child, right?
Yeah, it crushes your child.
I mean, I think on Verified Accounts, they reviewed Bullshit Jobs. I think we're going to be reading Graeber's book that came out before that, which was Debt, the first 5,000 years.
Oh, speaking of debt, remember what was it? Minnesota, they threatened to not cancel the debts of any students, or I guess former students or graduates who were out protesting shit. And I was just like, that's
just more empire shit, man.
That's the whole point of this. It's like they need leverage against you. They can control what you do. And it's just
absolutely.
I mean, Ron Kim said that. Remember when we did the pod with him? Yeah. He talked to us about him talking to some rich guy, and he's like,
right, yeah. And the guy was like, the fear is good. We want
the
people
fear is good. Yeah, we want. That's the reason they, if you're a father, they hire you because they know they can say, you know what, if you like, okay, whether it's bullshit you have to put up with, or something like blatantly illegal and immoral, they'll be like, hey, you know what, if you fire you, your kids will starve on the streets.
Well, when I like my boss said something similar to me when my wife and I bought our house, our condo. He would like just tongue in cheek. He was like, "We got you now," because it's like that's the biggest financial commitment you're gonna make, and they know how much they pay you, and they got you, right?
Children are the biggest,
and children too, but children definitely.
You can sell your house. You can't sell your children.
Well,
certain countries.
But children in a house are but I mean it's in a similar vein. But yeah, you can sell your house, but most people it's like they buy a house near their work so that they don't anyway. But yeah, so Justin asked like, what's the alternative? And I think that's probably related to what we're talking about when it comes to like going to Ivy Leagues and stuff like that. And I think I mean that's part of the question, right? Like, what's the alternative? Like, do we need to go to Ivy Leagues? No.
Justin, could you clarify that a little bit more? I mean, alternative to what exactly?
I guess alternative to this sort of like.
What's the alternative to the Ivies?
No, what's the alternative to this class striving mentality?
Striving, yeah.
The alternative is you get thrown off the fucking ride and you don't get back on. And you have to kind of confront the fact that there are stratums of society that you can't reach from here. You can't get there from here.
Yeah, so it's like that Gervais principle, right? I think you talk about that a lot, Teen, where it's like you have like the losers, right? Who are like the true believers. You have the clueless who are like the true believers, right? And then you have the losers who realize that it's a scam, and then you have like the psychopaths. The alternative, like to the striver, which is the clueless, would be just being the loser, right? You're just you don't buy into it. Something like that, right?
Yeah, I don't know if that's a good alternative. I think that is.
I'm not saying it's good. Happened. I'm just saying that's an alternative, right?
No,
you realize that it's a treadmill.
Look, the reality is stark. That's the thing about this shit. Is that this isn't about or the choices have changed and I've got to re-strategize. No, the choices have disappeared. That's the fucking problem. Is that there are no choices. There is no alternative. This is the game,
right?
So I think that the question of what is the alternative, I think that's the scary part of this whole thing is that there is no alternative. That more and more, it's absolutely the case that to get into that professional work is being inflated away. The value of professional work is being inflated away. So all of the stuff that we used to strive for is more it used to be running forward. Now it's running on a Peloton.
Right.
You're staring into a screen, being fed images while you run in place.
So so listen to our podcast about what loser. I don't mean loser in the classic sense of like there's actually a winner or loser, but it's sort of like this idea that you realize that you're not gonna, there's no winner or loser. Like you have to realize what the game is, and when you realize what the game is, you have a choice. Either you buy into it fully and you just try to go on that treadmill for that small chance to be sort of on the top of the pyramid, or you realize that you're not really going to get there and you do what you need to do to survive. So I don't say loser to like pass judgment on someone or say that like you're a loser versus winner.
No, I think the danger of what you're saying is that the striver mentality is often people think they're striving, but they're not actually striving. They're just trying to stay in place. And I think it's better to understand, like, for example, like we've been talking about law school, right? Like elite law schools. Just get over the idea that an elite law school is an elite place to be. It's not. Yeah. It's not a socially elite place to be at all. It is a professional. It's like a trade school. You know what I mean? It doesn't, like, I think it's better for us to take what we think might be these elite, paths and realize that they've been inflated into like this is just fucking working.
You're just working. You're just working. You're a working class.
Yeah,
you're not an elite anybody.
That applies to most of the professions now.
Absolutely.
You're just a working man.
Mm-hmm. You have a white collar versus a blue collar. But
yeah, and it's better to understand.
You're one firing away from being unemployed. So
people will talk about how most of America is like $400 away from you only have $400 in savings. You couldn't afford some sort of disaster. That's not saying that like it's just the retail worker that's in that precarious position. It's everybody. It's like a white collar professional who might work at a bank. They're in the same boat. There's nothing special or elite about it.
Yeah, Adam, can you highlight Jason's comment? 9:33 p.m. He says, "What do you think of data?" Okay.
So Jason asks, "What do you think of data disaggregation of AAPI statistics? I find it a bit galling every time, and typically East Asian elite blue check Asian talk or speaks for the whole community." Yeah.
I mean, I'm always a bit suspicious of the whole point of data disaggregation. It strikes me as a way to basically say, blame everything on the Chinese or whatever they think are the kind of wealthy Asians who are taking away the social justice credibility of the rest. So, like, if you look at the earnings, income, Taiwanese Americans are up there, and Japanese Americans,
pretty low.
Indian Americans, quite high up. Filipino Americans somehow, contrary to popular expectations, are quite high up. Korean Americans kind of low, but I think in popular imagination, it'll be like if you look Chinese, you're wealthy. If you're like darker skinned, you're not. And I think it's a way for them to try to shake off the burden of this unwanted East Asianness, yellowness that gives them all the downfalls of being basically white, yet none of the benefits. So, yeah, I'm just suspicious of the whole endeavor in general.
I mean, I think data disaggregation is fine. Just accept the results. Because the results are not going to confirm, I think, a lot of what our expectations are as to this correlation between skin color and income or wealth and privilege. It's not that simple. I think like it's come too much to this really, I think, almost racist conception of a color chart where we and I really hate this black and brown phrase. It's bothering the shit out of me how widespread.
I really don't like the category brown just because it's so ambiguous.
Yeah,
and I think it's the purpose. It's like,
well,
obviously, if you're not black, you can't call yourself black. You'll just get tarred and feathered and impaled on social media if you're not black and you pretend to be black. But if you're like somewhere in between and you're like, you're outside of I think there are like 3 designated races in America, right? You got the whites, the yellows, and the blacks. Everyone else can kind of call themselves brown. Even I've even seen like Filipinos call themselves brown, even though they're Asian enough that they'll get attacked for being so-called Chinese.
Right.
So brown is just this catch-all category for everyone who cannot claim blackness in the social justice.
But they don't want to be
credibility.
yellow Asian.
They kind of want to pry in, but not let other people in.
Yeah.
They're like,
They don't want the
wanna
yellow
go kill
Asians
this
to be able
shit,
to-
but not these
Right.
Andrew Yang motherfuckers.
So Jason says, he's a bit divided. He wonders if it's going to help with the high inequality discussions with high inequality in the Asian community. I don't think it will, because if you look at the data.
No, not only that. Did you see that? I mean, I tweeted it several weeks ago, but there was this New York Times article written by this, I forgot her name, but she's kind of, I think, notorious for being against the SHSAT and stuff. But she in the article, she said something, I think she was quoting someone. I don't think it was exactly her words, but she said something like, low-income Asian Americans are overrepresented. So it doesn't matter how much money you make, people.
What?
Yeah. It doesn't matter if you look Asian, you're not wanted. It ruins their photo op.
Yeah. So, okay. So there's that. But I also think that it's not going to help, because when you look at the Asian community and the actual numbers, Indian Americans are the most wealthy, followed by, or have the highest incomes, followed by the Filipinos. But in the popular discourse, Filipinos are characterized as being the poorest, or one of the poorest.
There is a lot of belief that Filipinos are like extremely poor.
Extremely poor.
Rich.
But if you look at so by income,
at least not by the data.
Yeah, so by the data,
Anecdotally
right?
true. In my life, that has not been the case.
No. So Indian Americans have the highest income.
What has not been true?
That Filipinos
are poor.
Are broadly like poorer than East Asians.
And
that's not been my experience.
Let me share.
I mean, that's anecdotal, right? But
yeah, it's anecdotal, but it's true.
Most
so
Filipinos I know are actually like a lot of Filipino doctors. Yeah. Indians are way up there in terms of.
So Indians are very high up there.
Indians are number one, and
Indians are number one. So let me share this, okay?
Yeah.
Chrome tab.
So that's an inverted color hierarchy.
Yeah. So if you look at this, right?
Brown South Asian up top.
Yeah,
sort of mid-tone Filipino in number 2, and then in East Asian somewhere running in like number 4.
In the middle or the bottom, right? So if they want to talk about the social justice hierarchy, where like they're, we want to make sure that the poor Asian groups are represented, and
highlight that part. Following Indian Americans is Filipino.
There are. So Indian Americans have the highest income
Japanese?
among Asian American subgroups, with a median income of $100,000. Following Indian Americans is Filipinos, with a median income of $80,000. Thereafter, Japanese and Chinese, and then Burmese are at the bottom. Koreans are seen as rich, but we're sort of in the middle, lower half.
I think we're either barely above or even below Vietnamese, who are not seen as wealthy.
No, Vietnamese are not. But I just don't think that if you disaggregate the data and you look at it, I think, and this is sort of what you were saying, Teen, you have to accept the results of that. And it's not going to be acceptable to the social justice crowd.
Right, so, because when they say disaggregation, they mean like let's revert to this color tone hierarchy. And it's not data, it's all inference, and this sort of like light skin is broke, dark skin is woke.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not like that's racist.
Yeah, it is.
You have the just because you have the skin tone chart going one way, okay, to go and say, oh, dark skinned people make less or poorer, and then you look at the data, and Indian Americans as a group are making 50% more on average than Chinese Americans in the country.
Yeah.
Nobody that's saying disaggregation has ever mentioned this fact. This clearly this stark fact. Like when I looked into it, I was like, holy shit, this is completely not what I expected.
Yeah.
Based on how people talk.
Adam, can you highlight CK3 benchmarks comment 933?
This one?
No. Yes, that one. And I think that's precisely correct. This is a it's a civilizational judgment masquerading as a statistical one. And I think, I mean, I've talked about this before. I think the underlying belief in the kind of like mainstream liberal mindset is the East Asians are if like the Western civilization has any kind of equivalent, the closest in the world are the East Asians. So it really doesn't matter how much money they make. They could be dirt poor, but you know that if they get their shot, they're going to rise to the top. Therefore, it doesn't matter if, like, say, Koreans aren't actually as wealthy as Filipino Americans in their mind, because Koreans are of the East Asian civilizational cohort. They're just genetically advantaged, and it's a very racist mindset, which is why they cannot come out and say it, which is why they gotta try to justify it in these statistical things, which then fly against the narrative they want to set. Because you know what they'll say, oh, you know what, the Filipino income is high because, I don't know, maybe a lot of
they're all
Filipinos,
nurses. Nurses make money. I don't know.
The argument for that, Filipino households tend to be bigger. Even though I think
They'll say you have to disaggregate it even more, right? You have to say
think these are
household
actually
versus individuals.
adjusted per capita, but let's give them the benefit of the doubt, say it's not. But then if that's not valid, then the whole thing is not valid. You cannot infer any. You cannot say, oh, look at the Chinese, like, third highest. Let's lock
right. And
them
you
up.
can't just you can't just then say, well, you can't just discount the Vietnamese number and say, well, it's a household. Well, then you have to say what percentage of the Chinese and all the other people's numbers is household versus individual, right? You can't just choose one group to do that to and the other.
Right. It just ends up being massaging the numbers to fit the outcome
your narrative,
that you want.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
I think I don't know that disaggregation just seems to be something that a lot of this is from Pina Ranger. The can you highlight that last one? How do you explain all the Assam Asian American politicians?
Pure political pressure, easy.
Yeah, I just think it became like this sort of vaguely responsible progressive notion that Asian, because I think a lot of the political stuff was like, oh, Asian Americans are just it's a
broad group with construct. So much. Yeah, exactly.
It's a very artificial construct. And so there's a lot of poverty within our communities, and we've got to understand. And then they made it, I think,
which is fine. I mean, it's fine.
No, it's fine. I think
concerned about that.
Data disaggregation is fine. I don't think it's a value neutral thing. But there was a lot of assumptions that this would break down along ethnic lines, that this would break down along skin color lines, that because they peddle this very simple notion that America is colorist, right? That automatically black skin, dark skin, undesirable, white skin, desirable. Therefore, your skin tone will put you somewhere, like, that's going to affect the outcome of your life. And I think it's a lot more complicated in America than just that, because there's a lot of intraracial historical dynamics. Like, for example, the difference between recent black immigrants from the Caribbean and from West Africa versus what's known as ADOS, right? So there's a lot of class differences there that are not based on skin color, that are based on historical contingencies. Like, when did you come to this country? From what class of people did you come here?
Right. What was the American foreign policy stance when your parents were allowed to immigrate here?
Yeah, like what visa did they come under?
Yeah.
Or did they come under a visa where they brought here as slaves?
Yeah.
These are really important questions. And the skin color stuff, I think, was a very typically naive Asian American idea that, for the woke warriors, like, made us seem like we were with it. Like, we were down with this idea that there's a big white-black divide and we've got to pick a side. And okay, fine. But to go with that whole simple, the darker your skin, the more oppressed you are, and the lighter skin you have, the more white adjacent you are, is so fucking like Fisher-Price logic level.
It is.
Yeah. It just goes to show you how fucking
my first racism.
How pointless this group of people is. And then when they do the data disaggregation, which I think is a good thing,
it's fine. Yes,
absolutely. They won't accept the fucking results. So people are still using this color shit. And you just go, look, the stark fact is, if you look at income, which I think is one of the most important things, it's inverted from what you think. It's 180 degrees from what people are saying it is.
And ironically, a lot of these people are so-called academics, right? And ostensibly you would think that they would want to go by what the numbers say, but
no. I mean, we all know how crooked that whole
field
I know
is,
that.
I'm just saying the veneer of it is right. But
I think one thing to consider is once you've acknowledged the fact that you either have fallen off of this social escalator or you don't want to be on it anyway, that you're less pressured to conform to the bullshit. And I think that's why you see a lot of bullshit with people in the academies, like people in these industries. Like not only is elite culture or is culture being gentrified, but it's becoming more and more monolithic and fake and bullshit. Like it's not just that it's gentrified, but it's also just terrible. Like it's shallow. It peddles easy answers. It's really not. It's not able to deal or unwilling to deal with reality, and I think it drives people insane. Like I think not only is it gentrifying stuff, but it's making it so, for me anyway, like I don't know what the fuck they're doing to culture, but it's not good. Chris, you guys spend a lot more time like dissecting culture and stuff, and I feel like it's a very pessimistic or it's a very bleak landscape out there.
Currently, yeah, the encouragement I get, and I get this mainly from our own personal development from when we started Plan A and stuff, is that I think it's going to soon reach a breaking point where whereas before anybody who spoke out against like this culture, it would be branded as like MAGA or alt-right. I think more and more people across the spectrum are just like, what is this bullshit? Things like that. Yeah.
So do we want to talk a little bit about Shang-Chi or no?
Okay. How about we're almost at 2 hours. Let's end it at 2 hours. I made this delicious curry that for all our listeners, I've put off eating so I could be on this. I do want to get into it, but I think 2 hours is a good time to turn it off. So we got 10 minutes. Plus, also, anybody had questions, we can put them up and we'll answer them. But I guess
so you got 10 minutes to put questions up. And
last 10 minutes we can talk about Shang-Chi.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth just mentioning it, right? Discussing it. So yeah, for those who aren't aware, I'm sure you guys are, but the Shang-Chi trailer or teaser went up, I think, yesterday, right?
Wasn't it today?
Wasn't today, was it?
I think it might have been today.
Recently. And so that's the Simu Liu movie with Awkwafina. I think Tony Leung, right? Tony Leung's
in it.
He's playing.
Michelle Yeoh's in it.
Yeah, so a lot of Asian stars and Asian American stars. Shang-Chi is sort of like, I wouldn't even see he's B-list. He's like C-list or D-list superhero in the Marvel universe. But he's actually I don't know if they're actually going to have him be a Happa in the movie, but in the comic books, he's the son of this sort of Fu Manchu, who's a very yellow peril character that was introduced in Marvel. And he's sort of just he's a stereotypical mustached, evil Asian character.
Didn't he rape a white woman? That's why Shang-Chi.
Well, no, he didn't rape a white woman. It's actually a lot more complicated than that. So she's an American white woman, and so in the first issue of Shang-Chi's comic, he's learned that like his dad is not this like good guy, he's a bad guy, and Shang-Chi goes to confront his mom, and his mom is this white American woman, and he's like, Mom, how could you possibly have a kid with, are these things I've learned about my dad true? And she's like, yes, it's true. And he's like, how could you do this? And she was just like, well, he's powerful, and I wanted my child to be powerful.
Okay.
So it's not even, it's sort of like she knows what he is. So that actually would probably that's actually a lot worse than just being raped by him. Like, I think people would be like, well, she knows that he's evil, but I don't know if they're actually going to make him Happa in the movie, because I know that like there's politics around Happa actors and actresses taking these Asian roles. But what did you guys think of the trailer? I mean, I thought it was pretty fun. The music was good. I think Simu Liu is really believable in terms of the action. Like he does it well. And I think it's going to be well made, right? All these Marvel movies, even if they're really shallow, are well made movies, right? So,
Yeah. I mean, I thought it was fine. I really have no investment in this, except I would love to see the irrational Simu Liu haters eat it. But besides that, I mean, I enjoyed the 2 or 3 seasons I watched at Kim's Convenience. I think Simu Liu's a nice guy. Hope he does well. I like Aquafina. Think the rest of the cast and Tony Leung I like. So I hope they do well. But I don't particularly have investment in this, except for what I just said.
I'm kind of looking forward to the movie, actually. It looked good. I think it's weird because like there was this. I think Simu being sort of a toxic Asian guy or whatever. He's a what? He's an MR Asian.
Yeah, I guess
he's a 4chan guy. He's not. He's Reddit.
Right,
I think it's got people a little fucked up because this is a pretty big achievement, and Aquafina has a pretty big role in it, and blah blah blah. It's Marvel. It's probably like woke Marvel. It's like the woke Marvel franchise, probably.
Kind of, I guess.
So it fits into the model of woke representation that the blue check crowd has been pining for a long time. This is like an elite project.
Yes,
and but the problem is that it's this fucking
Asian dude.
Yeah, and it's this. It's not. He's like straight. He's
ostensibly straight. Yeah,
he's like into his abs, like abnormally into his abs.
What do you mean by ostensibly?
What's that?
What do you mean by ostensibly straight?
Who knows if he's straight? I don't know. We're just assuming.
A little more power to him. But I
he's
think
presumably straight.
Presumably,
yeah.
I think he suffers from the Andrew Yang problem in that his come up was not through the approved channels. Like, how did Simu Liu come up? I mean, Wang Fu, he was in some Wang Fu stuff.
Was he? Nice.
Well, he was at least. There's a pretty funny.
Isn't Phil gonna have a cameo in the movie too?
Maybe. I mean, hey, good for Phil. Finally breaking into Hollywood. It's just that they don't control Simu Liu because he doesn't owe anything to them, and somehow, despite that, he has really reached the pinnacle of what a mainstream actor can.
He's a Marvel superhero.
A fucking Marvel superhero, which I hate Marvel, but still I have to recognize that as an actor, you really cannot get bigger than that. Besides maybe winning an Oscar and becoming a Daniel Day-Lewis type, that is the pinnacle of your career.
The closest thing was Mulan, which is also in the Disney realm, but it was a Chinese actress.
That's right.
Yeah, and that's
Chinese actress.
It wasn't the same.
Yeah, they couldn't get behind that, right? Because they had to apologize for the Uyghur stuff and all that, and it was too nationalist. So they couldn't really get behind her. So I think maybe they've been starved for one of their own headlining Media Rep Matters type of project.
Well, and this was a question that came up, is that like if he has a there's going to be some sort of romantic interest. Well, maybe not, but so if he has a romantic interest and it's an Asian woman, let's say it's Aquafina, will that be good or bad? Like, would that make people like it better or not?
Can you put up that tweet that I just linked in the private chat? I want to talk about this tweet. Maybe we can end on this.
I think they make a great couple.
The second one?
Yeah, the second one.
All right. Let me get this up. All right.
We could talk about this tweet.
Let me change my screen size because I know that people were complaining about the size. No, I'm kidding. I know it's big. Okay.
No. Simu Liu specifically said that when he first went to Hollywood, because he used to what did he used to work in? Wasn't he an accountant before? And he decided one day to become an actor. He goes to Hollywood. Ken Jeong was the first guy to actually hook him up, and he really did help. And I will give credit to Ken Jeong, especially since I really did like Soul Searching, that movie that Ken Jeong produced. He is on his way to climbing out of the deep hole he's dug with The Hangover.
He's got a long way to go.
But I will give Ken Jeong credit in that I do think behind the scenes he is genuine in trying to help people.
That's true. And Soul Searching was a really good movie, I'll have to say.
That was a good movie.
We should probably talk about that.
Power through the first 10 or 15 minutes because it's terrible.
It is pretty
much
bad.
better than that first 10 or 15.
And I'll say, as an adoptee, the adoptee part of that movie, I appreciate that a good, quarter of that movie is focused on that.
That was really powerful. Yeah,
that was
it was a big part of that movie,
editing.
and it was actually a really well done part of the movie.
Yeah,
I think
felt it. Yeah.
It was balanced. It was not like this, oh my God, it's such a great thing that she was adopted sort of message. And they showed the birth. Well, I won't get into spoilers for it, but I thought, at least this adoptee thought it was well done.
The actress who played the adoptee woman, the young adoptee woman,
really, really awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
Okay,
awesome.
so this tweet I thought was kind of interesting because I actually kind of agree with it on a political at a political level, but something about it just struck me as odd. Okay, and so
I think the motives are questionable. I think
it just seemed a little weird. Yeah, so movie trailer has. I mean, I don't know. It's won't reference what movie. We all know which one it is.
Yeah.
My biggest piece of advice to people is to not depend on entertainment to inform your concept of Asian American politics. Yes, I agree with that. Yeah. I just don't know if Shang-Chi is even approaching that. I don't know if it's trying to do that. I don't know if it is or not. It's an action hero movie. I understand the importance of entertainment in creating and reinforcing cultural values. I understand the desire to see ourselves on our own terms, and I know that others are also choosing to see us. I understand the desire to see ourselves on screen and triumph. Okay, so what is this getting at? It's like, I understand that you want this, but I'm going to have to spoil this party for you. Right? Like,
she's going to have to yuck your yum, folks.
Okay, so I am myself an Asian American who works in entertainment. I think she says she writes copy for like corporate advertising,
business storyteller for the storytelling business.
She's in
advertising and marketing.
PR. She's in PR.
Yeah.
I know the work is important. I know my work is important, but it is so far from the core of the issue. Representation is not liberation, and it is counterproductive to fixate on it. Okay. Not gonna lie, I think that's probably kind of true.
I've said similar things myself.
So scroll down a little bit.
Yeah.
Asian American identity is so fragmented and contentious. We already see a lot of issues in the politics of which Asians get represented and how. So many people see a movie and think this is a win for the community. And I got to ask, in what way?
And what community?
If your concept of Asian American politics hinges on celebrity, you're getting a very skewed take on the issues and priorities from people who are fighting for jobs. You shouldn't hinge your concept on any politic around celebrity. A limited amount of Asian
American celebrities.
Yeah, there's a one that below this I want to see. Maybe show this thread.
Yep.
There's one that just I was like, wait.
Was it the one about food insecurity?
Yeah. There he goes. Actors are going to fight for their jobs, so I don't care if they want to talk about the importance of on-screen rep. But that's not going to solve poverty, illiteracy, police brutality, sexual assault, or food insecurity in our communities. Are you listening to folks addressing those issues? What the fuck does Shang-Chi have to do with this? What? How does Shang-Chi or any Marvel movie purport to address food insecurity
or illiteracy or any of those things,
or police brutality or poverty? How does any of Shang-Chi endanger that those efforts? That was the part where I was like, how did this thread about just sort of like mildly warning people off of Shang-Chi as, don't get too excited, there's other problems, become this like tirade against people who seem to be like, oh, I don't care about poverty anymore, we got Shang-Chi.
But I just also question the timing of this stuff. This is very
strawman-y to me.
No, but the reason I question the motives is then she goes on to bad about Next Shark, says that they're responsible for spreading like incel stuff, and then she cites among the people, that tweet where she says, "Council, I learned a lot from top of my head."
Why did she put the stars? Why did she put star cell? We know what you're talking about.
But she cites someone like reappropriate. So I'm like, okay, like, were you saying this in like 2018 when things like Crazy Rich Asians and like To All the Boys I Loved Before were coming out? Were you just as militant back then? And the thing is, I myself have weaned off the whole media rep thing, and I think that's natural. But I think that's what makes it more confusing. Be like, who are the ones who've naturally evolved, and who are the ones who've decided, okay, this thing that is catering more to straight second generation Asian American guys, like that a lot of these people kind of see as the scum of the earth. It's catering to them. Therefore, now is the time to now get off the media rep.
I question the timing of this.
Well, I think that tweet about Next Shark reveals who she's aiming
Yeah.
this tweet at, which you can kind of infer from up front. This is like, who would you have to advise against going to Next Shark and reading incel nonsense?
What
guys? Asian guys. And who's excited about Shang-Chi? Asian guys,
Asian dudes,
right?
That's what I'm saying. Like, I question the timing of this.
I think this is directed at Asian guys. I think this is in part annoyance that an Asian man scored the sort of like ultimate in Hollywood rep, which is getting your own Marvel franchise. I think it's annoyance at, just the maleness, the cis hetero maleness of Shang-Chi and all this stuff. And fine, I don't really have a pony in that. I'm just saying that I just think that it's kind of bullshit to be like, we can't let this override our concern about food insecurity.
Yeah, it's very. I just don't
understand what the fuck that's supposed to mean.
I don't. Yeah, and
I don't get it, especially from someone who works in media.
Well, she's not really in media; she's in marketing. Okay, but yeah, so like, GW says like, wasn't Black Panther sort of about? It wasn't Black Panther going to save the inner city? It's worse. So I don't know if you saw. I don't know. I think you said you didn't see Black Panther, or someone said they didn't see Black Panther, but Black Panther's father actually goes to Oakland to kill his own brother, who was doing the work in Oakland to try to liberate black people in the 60s and 70s, and said, no, you can't do this because you're using the Wakanda technology. I'm going to murder your ass. And then he gets killed by Killmonger, because Killmonger's like, why are we letting our people be oppressed? And then Chadwick Boseman's Black Panther is like, yes, that's because we can't do it for some reason, and I'm going to solve this by building a community center in Oakland and whatever. So Black Panther wasn't going to save the inner city. His father actually went to kill his own brother, who was going to do that. So there's that. And then
I'm just saying, like, if you're going to snipe at each other, like if Asian women are going to snap at Asian men because it's too easy for Asian men to score these franchises, and Asian women are left with a television show like Kung Fu, I think that's valid. I think it's totally valid. I think like, just say, I don't know why that just can't be said outright, because I would have no problem with someone being like, there's so many talented Asian women who could pull off a franchise, but they didn't even get cast as a side character. Well, and Simu comes along and gets a franchise. I think that is a legit complaint.
Yeah, and we know that we have friends who talk about that.
And I think Asian men could actually be enlisted to be sympathetic to that idea.
Well, I would venture to guess that Simu would be sympathetic.
The
to
idea is that
right?
I think it would be better to just be straightforward, that the complaint here is that an Asian man has it too easy, and that there's plenty of Asian women who could headline a Marvel franchise just as well, if not better.
And I think Simu would agree with that. I don't think Simu would disagree with that at all.
Well, yeah, but what I'm saying is, like, I think that's a perfectly fine thing to say, but the need to like hide that and to start saying like, oh, well, you see, you don't really care about justice. We care about justice. You only care about, Shang-Chi and
his
looking
abs.
good. Yeah. And I'm over here worrying about food insecurity, and you're over there being an incel.
Right.
Is like,
which you can't even say.
This is actually, in my experience, and I really hate this, because like, this is not innocent shit. Like, this becomes very fucked up. The more that gets done, because you start creating real fucking problems where you really get these real gender divides that are really fucking sick. And like this, I just don't see. I think that this is like a way of, it's an externality where people are polluting like the public conversation with these gripes about how it's easier for an Asian man to get a major Hollywood role than an Asian woman, which is a real topic, but it's not it's obviously not food insecurity.
Right. No.
So let's not
Right.
pretend that that's what it's about.
Right. Exactly.
Okay? It is
That's
about
exactly. Yeah.
How much an Asian man versus an Asian woman, literally, we're talking about 1 or 2 people here.
Yeah.
Right?
And the jobs of actors.
Out of tens of millions of people, we're talking about 1 or 2 people here. How much easier is it for Simu Liu to get his own franchise versus an Aquafina or I forget the name of Olivia Liang in Kung Fu?
Yeah.
Right? We're talking about them and their relative success to each other in terms of like they're all super successful. Fine. Let's split hairs because there's maybe some substance there, but it is not food insecurity.
Yeah, so, it's that need to give that veneer of I'm so lofty. I'm thinking about world peace, and you're thinking about fuckability politics. Look, people, it's all fuckability politics. Okay, let's be honest here.
Exactly. Don't kid yourself.
Didn't you read Darwin?
Maybe that's a good way to end it.
I guess we can end it there. I know we're at 10.
I think the Shang-Chi trailer is supposed to come out in a week or 2. I'm sure we can talk more about that. And
well, like Tina, like you said, look, I'm excited for it. Like I think it's going to be good. I'm also excited for Mortal Kombat. I think Mortal Kombat.
Joe Taslim.
Yeah. And Louis Tan.
Man crush on Joe Taslim. If you've seen Warrior, you'll know why.
But I think I think Mortal Kombat. I wasn't so excited about the first trailer. I thought it looked a little hokey. I didn't like it, but the subsequent stuff has sort of opened my eyes a bit. But as CS is saying, please like, comment, and subscribe. Join our Patreon. Here's our Patreon.
Yes.
Everything that we get from you guys, from our patrons, the vast majority of it does go to our writers. We've published some really good pieces lately. One about adoption and sort of empire and a little bit more historical look.
What else does it go to? Our hosting fees or something?
It goes to some just like our hosting fees and things like that. But most of it goes to our writers, right? Mm-hmm. So please do that if you like.
One last thing I want to say. I saw some people in our comments talking about Simu Liu's attractive. I saw this on like some the Asian male subreddits. People were debating. Oh, Simu Liu's only a 6 out of 10 man. His facial aesthetics aren't up to par. I'm like, shut the fuck up.
That almost makes me like him better, right? Because it's sort of like this guy is going to kick these guys' ass. I like that.
He has dorky chat appeal, the Marvel signature, the Paul Rudd Ant-Man.
Yeah.
Appeal.
Paul Rudd's awesome.
Star-Lord appeal. He has him.
Chris Pratt's awesome. Yeah. So Anyway, all right. Thanks, guys.
Curry, happy 420, everyone.
Happy 420.
All right. Bye, all.
Bye, everybody.